Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Serious topic for you today. Let's do it. What's something that will F you up for life if you experience it just once? Some of this is not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Heroin. I haven't touched heroin or painkillers in over 7 years, but I still have regular dreams of banging a fat shot of dope and all of my earthly problems melting away. I find it incredibly sad how the birth of my son couldn't even come close to the high of some good clean dope. Nothing will ever feel that good, and I understand why a good chunk of my friends growing up just ended up dying. Heroin is effing evil. Nothing in life prepares you for caring for an ailing or dying parent. It is an absolute heartbreaker and mind-F. I did it, and it negatively changed my personality. I seem sad more than I seem happy now. I'm working on it though. I'm sending good vibes and sweet juju to anyone else out there who's doing this. Much love and support to you. When I was 7, I saw a neighborhood kid run his bike into a tall cement retaining wall at high speed and hit his head. He died at the base of that wall. We lived way out in the country, and it took forever for help to come. I could hear his mom wailing 3 houses away in the middle of the night. It was over 50 years ago, and still haunts me to this day. The moment you, grandma, grandpa, dad, or mom doesn't remember who you are after suffering from Alzheimer's or some other similar disease. My grandma had a stroke in early 2020 and has been in a nursing home ever since. I didn't see her for 2 years straight because of COVID, and the last time I saw her, she had no idea who I was. She practically raised me because she worked at the preschool I went to and picked me up from school every day and stayed at my house until my parents got home late from work. I could tell she's near the end of her life. My mom got murdered in 2006, and it sucked, whatever. But what was astronomically worse was dealing with the justice system and sitting through 2 different trials just to have one lead to a non-guilty verdict and for the other guilty verdict to be overturned during sentencing due to a failure on the part of my local PD. Totally soul-crushing. Having to see autopsy photos, hearing family members testify, watching the defense tear apart a dead woman's character, and having to sit in a small room with the potential killer and his family and kids and stuff. So crazy. Having to make the choice to turn life support off on your 26-year-old wife over 30 years ago, and just thinking about it rips my guts out. Update. Thank you all. Someone once told me you have no control over the things that happen to you in life. What you do control is what you do with those things. You alone can choose whether or not you allow them to make you more compassionate and loving, or turn you hard and bitter. Love you guys. My complete condolences. I'm sorry. It's terrible. Hope you're okay, or at least getting there. My girlfriend just died suddenly 4 days after my birthday on Christmas Eve, and 2 weeks before our 13th anniversary. I did CPR on her for 8 minutes with blood coming out of her mouth. After the ambulance left, there were trails of her blood to the door. She had an undiagnosed heart condition and went into cardiac arrest after running errands on a normal day. I'm usually a pretty grounded person, but I've not been able to get off the couch since. She was only 31. Finding a dead body. My neighbor committed suicide with a shotgun to the mouth of his truck across the street from where I was living at the time. Considering the close proximity, I never heard a thing. It happened overnight, so I can only assume everyone slept through it somehow. I went to get into my car to go to work that morning and just happened to notice that something seemed off as I saw the windows of his truck. Unfortunately, I got a little closer and realized what I was looking at. 20 years later, and that image has never left my memory. He was a super nice guy. I hope he found peace wherever he ended up. And please, if you're struggling with mental health issues, reach out to someone. In the USA, call or text 988 to reach the suicide hotline. Being the person sitting there with someone as they take their last breaths and die, particularly if they've gone into a death rattle, which is far worse than what people think. It's beyond awful. Watching someone die from cancer. My mom took care of her best friend when she got stage 4 lungs spread to all of her internal organs. Me and my sister would go over to her house every day while my mom took care of her. It literally sucked the life out of her like a juice box. A couple of months in, I realized she was going to die. I was relieved when my mom told me she died. I was in 4th grade. I don't look at death like normal people. I just don't want to suffer. Killing someone accidentally like a car accident scenario. On YouTube, there's a video of a Chevy Suburban going down a snow-covered highway, and obviously the car filming this has a dash cam. Off in the distance, you see a traffic coming your way. About that time, the Suburban starts to fishtail ever so slightly. As the traffic approaches, the Suburban's fishtailing gets worse and worse until it gets completely sideways and goes into the path of approaching traffic, and the lead vehicle is an 18-wheeler. It literally hit the Suburban so hard, you see it in real time as it was happening. I guarantee there were no identifying pieces left of that Suburban to indicate what it was. The 18-wheeler's fuel tanks explode and goes off-road and comes to a stop. It chokes me up just describing this accident because there's no way anyone in that Suburban survived. And if the trucker survived, he's probably still dealing with that. Being cheated on. That shit stays with you in the back of your head and your mind regardless of whether it was physical or emotional. It happened to me in every single relationship I've been in since I started high school, except for my first boyfriend, who I dated for just shy of a year. Effing sucks knowing I haven't been good enough for anyone yet. Dying. I flatlined and was revived. The process to revive me and keep me alive took 15 people 45 minutes. The nurse in the room with me when it happened told me about it after I could sit up in bed and talk. I was intubated, paralyzed, in an induced coma, and on dialysis. She was bawling, and I felt awkward because I didn't recognize her or remember anything. It's been 8 years, but I still have nightmares that are exactly what I had when I was in a coma, and I wake up having panic attacks. I work in a foundry where excessive heat is an inherent job risk. The last summer where I lived, the temperature peaked at around 95 to 98 degrees Fahrenheit outside, which meant upward of 150 Fahrenheit inside, and even worse, right next to the metal. During these summers, it's expected to see people fall out, as we call it. Of course, whenever this happens, the others of us nearby drop what we're doing to help the person. In June, there was this guy working there, 23, fresh out of college, and planned to just work through the summer for extra money before starting his teaching job. He thought he would be fine despite a bunch of people checking on him to make sure he's okay. He ended up suffering heat exhaustion and passing out. When he did, he hit his head on the concrete and began going into seizures. Several people, myself included, worked to calm the seizures, then move him nearer to a fan. Paramedics were called and many attempts were made by all of us to help him. Once the paramedics arrived, they got him on a stretcher and began carting him toward the ambulance. Unfortunately, he didn't even make it to the ambulance before he passed away. He may not have been a relative or loved one like the other comments I've read on here, but he was a great guy and still pretty damn young. Watching someone die like that has left some pretty deep scars on all of us who were trying to help him. Like, what could we have done differently, or wondering if there's more we could have done. P.S. On mobile, so format may be funky. You go to work and you expect to work hard, get compensated, and use that income to take care of your family. You shouldn't have to die on the job. They gotta do something better. I know it's a foundry, but come on. Not to say it F me up for life, but it did serve in Desert Storm. All I'll say is this. You'll be surprised what you can do in defense of your life. Eventually, extreme situations become normal place. The problem comes into play trying to adapt back to everyday living. Hence, getting some trigger time in the sandbox will definitely change a person forever. Cheers to all my brothers and sisters in arms out there. I figure it would mess up some people, but I must be hard-headed or something. My partner tells me it would ruin some people. Many years ago, I was tased in a completely incoherent psychedelic state. I had tried 2 tabs of a research chemical I had never touched before, Turns out, whoever put it together stubbed their toe when they was drip-dropping the stuff on the tabs, and it blew my gourd. I ran around town naked and had at first the best trip I'd ever had, then the worst trip I'd ever had. I heard all these voices saying how I would have to go through the worst experience to save my family, and then I got tased. It felt like I had a rusty chain squeezing all the way through my ribs. That's when I could see I was naked and knew I messed up bad. They had to tase me because they couldn't get a hold of me. It was like you hear those stories of PCP. These big police officers could not hold a 125-pound lanky young man, so rather than sitting on my chest and possibly hurting me, they zapped me. But then they had to zap me again and again and again and again until I stopped moving, because I was literally somewhere else and had zero idea of what was actually happening, which did actually hurt me. They told me later they kept telling me to stop moving, but I didn't hear any of that, so they just kept zapping me until I couldn't move anymore. The second to last zap, I was hurting pretty bad and struggled to get a breath, and they got me again before I could. It felt like I was suffocating, and I felt like I was actually on fire. I think at the time I thought I actually was on fire, because in the tape I just kept saying, "I'm on fire." Couldn't move. Then I went unconscious. Woke up in the hospital strapped down, still half incoherent, and I asked the nice nurse why I was strapped down. She said because I was fighting the police. I said, uh-oh. Then a rude cop said he was going to the Krusty Krab to get a Krabby Patty and asked if I wanted one. I said, oh my God, after what I just went through, that would be amazing. I feel like I'm starving to death. No Krabby Patty. I still couldn't move. My muscles had totally given out, and no signals to make them move did anything. Couldn't pick my head up, couldn't move my arms or legs. It was scary. The doctors told me later that they weren't sure if I was going to make it, since I was tased so hard so as to go unconscious. All of my muscles, including my heart, were putting out so much lactic acid that my kidneys couldn't filter it all, and they started shutting down. They thought I might die. They gave me fluids and waited because there wasn't anything else they could do, I think. Mostly I was upset over how it could make my mom and my wife at the time feel. My mom's a really good person and has been really good to me. We all thought the police dragged me by my feet, raking my chin on the gravel, but nope. Turns out I was raking my chin back and forth on the ground. I supposedly pulled hard enough on the shackles and handcuffs at some point to cause some nerve damage in my shin and dulled sensation in my hands ever so slightly. Don't remember any of that. My face and hands swole up like balloons. I'm still here, almost a decade later. I've wanted to tell the story for a really long time, but I was horrifically embarrassed about it. It took many years to forgive myself. I only ever took that drug because I was unhappy and didn't understand anything about my life. I wanted to find myself, find out who I was. Well, I did, just not in the way I thought I would. By the way, I found out years later I was unhappy because my wife was emotionally manipulative and abusive to me the whole time, and I just didn't know what was happening. High school sweetheart, but not really. I'm happy to say I'm good now, and I'm over it, but I do still have dreams of police chasing me with tasers, sometimes. Still not sure if there was any permanent damage to any of my organs, but hopefully not. If you ever tried something before, you have no idea how it's going to affect you. I wish I'd been more careful, and truly, I will never touch another research chemical for the rest of my life. I appreciate myself a lot more now. I'm really glad it didn't mess my mind up more than it did. Yeah, I mean, it's a cautionary tale for sure. You did make some of it sound pretty cool, but you were right at the end of the day, and I'm glad you won't touch that stuff anymore. Once, clearly, at least for that, was enough. Glad you're all right now. Methamphetamine. I have watched school friends, old workmates, and guys I've played union and league with get hooked on P and taken out by this drug. Despite knowing what it has done to many people, we know my closest friend is now a user and addict as well, so effing sad for his wife and kids and his siblings. Having your at-the-time best friend shot and killed in front of you as a kid, then, for a year ago, getting a call from his mother of her crying hysterically, saying they finally got his murderer, but realizing you have to relive the event they gave you your depression, anxiety, anger, and hatred. My wife has been trying to help me through this, but I don't know if I can do this. I just want my friend back so bad. I've missed him forever, and my bad thoughts are coming back in waves, self-harm, and own attempt. I need this to be over, one way or another.